All right, this is it, chapter 4. So this is for the paperback, we're now in volume 2. If you're in the deluxe version, it's still in volume 1. So I guess I'll change the like title card thing or whatever on the front end. But we'll go ahead and do the bubble tea stuff. I guess I'll do another one. Anyway. So I'll start. Does that sound good? Since I'm not as excited about it. Pineapple black tea.
Try it. You haven't even tried it.
I haven't even tried it yet.
Yeah.
Huh. It's not quite as sweet. Is that what I've imagined? Do you want some?
Yeah, I'm gonna try.
Okay. It's good. We'll see how it goes. I probably like the dragon fruit one more, but let's get into it. What about you?
I have peach oolong tea.
So oolong has made it into every video, so he's definitely going to get in this one too. Got to get that kami.
It's the best tea.
That
the best.
That kami representation. Okay. So this has been a difficult chapter for us to digest, and we talked about it a lot, and it's really hard to figure out how to structure this stuff. So we're just going to kind of jump into it. And we don't know if we should do characters or like key scenes or whatever, but who gives a fuck? In the beginning of the chapter, it starts off where the other one left off, right? Where they're checking out the, whatchamacallit?
The bechelit?
The bechelit. Guts is saying some other stuff about it, right? He's saying it's a key to another dimension that overlaps with ours, to the God Hand. Any thoughts about this? So this is more lore drop. What do you think about it?
I was like, what is the God Hand? I was pretty intrigued.
There's a visual to go along with it.
There is.
So
it was interesting. I checked out the visual pretty extensively just because of the silhouettes.
Yeah. So that's kind of like a trope, the silhouette business. Who done it? It's kind of like a who done it for manga and anime. So okay. And so then Vargas starts talking about what happened to him in more detail, and this is pretty cool. Because it was a wonderful, it was a beautiful scene that was, it was kind of like the Bambi scene of this chapter. Or no, maybe not. Okay.
Bambi scene?
You said it was grotesque, and then I asked you, could you like explain that in a different way? You said no, it was very grotesque.
Yeah. Goodness gracious. So I think the grotesquerie is like off the charts with this chapter, but I am so sick of the word grotesque that I'm not going to say it.
Because of the book? Because of this?
No, I just need another word to describe my disgust at...
How about nasty?
No, it's just... I don't know. There's a lack of... There's no elegance in the word nasty. I'm sorry.
True, that's true. We talked about this a little bit about whether we would talk about it or not, but so I used to work in a treatment team, which is psychologists and psychiatrists and behavior analysts, and so like I was on a team where we were like diagnosing people for mental illness, and looking from my experience there, and I'm by no means an expert, but don't do an appeal to authority.
He's cheaper than BetterHelp.
Yeah, get on it. Yeah. Okay. So, I'm no authority, but don't appeal to authority because that would be a fallacy, right? I would say, like, looking at this, like, looking at the way that Guts acts, he would definitely, like, be in the category of possibly diagnosis with phobia. Haphephobia is the fear of being touched, right? Obviously, we're talking about that. And so here are the 5 like indicators for someone who has haphephobia. And the way it works is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Illness and Disorder has all these listed, every mental disorder and then the criteria, and then, a treatment team of experts will sit there and like talk about, or maybe just a specific expert will talk about like what they think. If they think the person fits the description, there's a certain amount of things that they have to tick off here. So one is an irrational or excessive fear of the thing itself. So in Guts' case, or haphephobia, being touched. Number 2 is exposure causes panic attacks. So that's like you get ultra nervous, you start sweating, you start flipping out, like thinking about the situation. Number 3 is the person knows it's irrational. Like you can tell them like, hey, like people get shots every day. You got a fear of needles? Like this happens every single day. And like, yeah, I know it doesn't make sense. I just can't help it. So it's like a physical reaction that happens like outside of your rationale about what makes sense there. Number 4 is that it's actively avoided. And number 5 is that like that avoidance anxiety like actually affects your day-to-day life, right? Like it seriously fucks you up. So, and this can be brought on by like an incident, right? Or some people just have it like from birth or whatever. And so I would say like, Guts is definitely displaying this, but I think it's interesting in this fictional story because the like third like indicator, right? The person knows it's irrational. It's like, in this world, it seems like maybe it's more possible that you couldn't make the case that the fear of being touched is irrational, just given what's going on here. So did you have any thoughts on that?
I do think it's interesting to think about because there is something going on there. It is absolutely noticeable in his reaction. Like this person is trying to make a connection with him, this appeal in which he grabs his shoulders, and Guts, the way he reacts is so visceral.
He does talk about being disgusted by people who are weak, and there's a couple of times where he's mentioning that to Puck. So I do feel like it's hard to know what it is with him, but I just thought that it'd be interesting to bring up, and man, that would be a terrible phobia to have. Going forward, they're like discussing all this stuff, and I think it cuts to some stuff with Zondark from last chapter, who got his face crushed in because his emissar was too weak to stand to Guts' sword.
Yeah, and really what I was thinking in regards to this was I just can't tell how much of Zondark is present, like, because he is like a mentally captain. Yeah. But he doesn't seem to be all there in terms of his mental faculties.
Yeah.
Which is a little confusing to me.
Like that he's high rank, you mean?
Yeah, high rank, but maybe not possessing an intellect that would be required of a captain.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, his like most together moment was him like challenging Guts, which was a failure. Mm-hmm. I will say, like, maybe in this sense, like, just his physicality is enough for him to like get that rank, right? Because I mean, he's like high spec as a human man,
That is true.
Yeah, he's definitely a specimen. But yeah, he's going ape shit, right? And he is. He actually kills in this like little like under scene that's really kind of difficult to see. He kills some old man, just grabs his head, and then the next scene, the guy's just on the ground with his head splattered, and he's just saying kill, 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 kill. So, and then a scene that like might even be deemed grotesque happens when the Count shows up. Did you want to talk about that?
The transfer?
Is that what you're calling it? The exchange?
Yeah, the exchange, the transfer. When the Count gives.
So and by gives he hands it to him? Or he's like, hold on, I got something in my pocket here. Here.
Oh my god.
Is that what he does?
No, not at all. Why don't you tell us what he does?
Or is it more like he has a makeout session with a very phallic undergina monster that comes out of his mouth? Is that more like it?
Yeah, that's more like it.
Didn't think I was going to say that, did you? You didn't expect that. We talked about this and she didn't want to talk about it. But it's in the story, so get Berserk. Go Berserk. But there's a little bit more to this, right? That you wanted to say.
Yeah, I had noticed, and this is kind of funny because there's lots of things I didn't notice in this chapter, but I had noticed that the Count refers to it as, here, take my daemon, D-A-E-M-O-N.
Yeah, D-A-E, yeah.
Yeah, and
it's demon just with an A after the D. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And
I mean, have you encountered that term before?
I had always just thought it's another way to say demon. But then I noticed that there are other areas where demon is being used and daemon is being used.
In Berserk.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So when Guts refers to the God Hand, he states that they are demons that are doing evil things.
So do you think that is just like a lost in translation thing, or do you think that's an actual
I definitely
difference?
Think there's a difference. At the first time I read it, I thought demon and daemon, like, they're the same. You know, it's just different spelling. That's all there is to it. But then I started noticing this differentiation, and so I looked up the difference between the two. A lot of people, or a lot of sources, will say they're the same, and daemon is just like an older term. But then there are other sources that say demon is specifically evil, and daemon is could be benevolent or could be malevolent, depending on the situation.
So yeah, I thought that was interesting that caught your eye. And so the Count is saying, here, have it. Right. And so that's a pretty gross scene, and it's like, I wouldn't call it like a scene that's like specifically homoerotic. It's just uncomfortable. And the Count looks disgusting because this thing coming out of him like has his face. It looks like the monster as when that like is in the depiction of Vargas talking about his family getting eaten. It looks like that, and but it has the Count's like fat, chubby, potato head face, which is just gross. And it also looks like he's having the time of his life. Like, he is a happy man. Like, he's getting some joy from this disgusting experience, is what it looks like.
Yeah. This definitely presented a lot of questions for me about the way all of this is working. In terms of whether the Count and the daemon are separate beings, or if they're acting as one, because as far as I am reading this thing inside him is pretty much a parasite. Like, this is almost a symbiotic relationship in that it's
between the daemon and the Count, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that he is using the Count, or it is using the Count as a way to get what it wants, which is to eat people. And using the Count as like a glove to
He definitely looks like a meat puppet.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
No eyebrows, just skin, and it seems to be like a sleeve.
Yeah. Pretty much being able to pass in this world as a human being in order to accomplish its aims, which is to prey on people. And, you know, it actually reminded me, especially you had mentioned in the last chapter, and, you know, we see it very clearly here that he has no eyebrows.
Right.
And all of this actually reminded me of Men in Black, which, you know, in UFO lore, are the men that will visit you after you've seen a UFO.
Yeah, I've actually never heard this. Like, you brought up that you were going to talk about this, and I haven't. I mean, I've heard the movie, but I haven't heard about the like deeper lore of where that comes from.
Yeah, so they're actually seen often as malevolent, in that they'll threaten you and like you better be quiet about what you've seen. But the thing that always stands out in these stories is how strange they are. Like, they won't have eyebrows, or something will have been lost in translation, as if they are other beings trying to
like impersonate like regular people.
Yeah.
So like kind of like an Alien Uncanny Valley type of deal.
Yeah, but they're getting it wrong. Like, my favorite story is how someone has dinner with this person, and he opens the pepper bottle, and he just dumps all of the pepper on his food.
Is this how you got pepper much? Is this how you pepper?
And proceeds to eat the food. And I wish I could find this story now. I've just listened to so many podcasts and read so many things that who even knows where I heard this. But it's just fun to hear these stories, you know.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, whatever you may think about the veracity of them, I just think it's a fun thing to think about, you know. True. And like they show up in 2020 at somebody's door with a fedora and, you know, in
that's
the
good.
suit
I like that.
And tie and the 1947 car.
So like if I go somewhere with MC Hammer pants on, I might be a man in black. Yeah, so that happens, and then Zondark seems to be a changed man.
Oh, that was absolutely in this whole thing. I mean, the torture and eating scenes definitely are impactful, but
this was worse for you.
The one scene that absolutely gave me a chill, and you know, even the exchange is actually absolutely disgusting. But you know,
it's like people who say frickin' instead of fuck. Like, just say this. Like, God, Jesus knows what you're doing. Like, you're not gonna go to heaven. You're cussing. Okay. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Is the scene where Zondark is outside of the palace, with the Count in front of him, and like, the Count is like about to sick him on guts. And just this vacant look, like this thing has moved into him and just kind of displaced him. You know, not that there was much before, but there's definitely like unbridled rage.
You can see that he's like kind of like trance/registering that a trance is taking over him in some kind of weird fashion. This is bound to come up, right? Because you're new to manga, you're 0% anime, and so two scenes happened here that were totally escaped your grasp, right? One is just like when we were talking about this, I would mention something, you'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about, and then you go back and read it, and you're like, oh damn, this is in the scene, and it's in a scene that you like and know about, right? And so one of those is when Guts and Vargas and Puck are like talking, there's like a shadow. They like pan away from the door of Vargas's secret lab, and there's a shadow there, right? And then later, like, or in this Zondark scene, someone comes up and says, "Oh, our informant has told us, you know, where the Black Swordsman is." And so that is something that, like, I mentioned to you, and you're like, "I didn't see that at all." So, and then the other one is Zondark's like the different aperture of his character, which you did notice, but he like ducks underneath a door frame like calmly, which is just sort of a different mode of operation than he would. And I mentioned that and you didn't see it. So like, you know, manga like as a medium is really interesting because it's not a book. So you can't just go through, like, it can't just explain something as much as it wants through words, right? It's got to get a lot done with a very little. you know, and it has to think about spacing of panels and stuff. So if there's another panel that's more important, they have to get what they can done in other panels, you know. But I would say that like there is not something that happens in this medium for Berserk at the very least, right? And probably a lot of other ones where there's not a point to the picture that's on the page, you know. And so it's like, I think like in American media, I mean, I'm kind of like reverse xenophobic against American content generally, you know. But I would say that there's like this kind of like discare for a lot of filler stuff in American content that teaches people to sort of like be like, there's a bunch of shit that happens in a show that doesn't fucking matter, or there's a bunch of stuff that happens in a book and it just doesn't matter, you know. And that is not the case, I would say, for Berserk or other, you know, specific manga or a lot of anime content also, in my opinion, which is why it is, you know, I think that it's a different experience. Your thoughts on that? I'm sorry.
So I have gotten so used to speed reading through mysteries and thrillers because so many of them are just garbage. And yeah, like...
But you read them still.
I haven't for a long time. I haven't been able to bear it. But, you know, where you'll read through this whole mystery book and at the end it'll be like, the solution is that this person you've never heard of did this one thing that you... that
wasn't on the menu of possibilities. Yeah, I mean, but I'm not saying that like that definitely happens, and that's just bad writing.
But I mean, the whole book was worthless because you could never see this solution ever.
None of the red herrings, even like everything was a red herring in that sense. Like yeah.
And while this is a new medium for me, and I was very careful I am very careful in trying to figure out what's going on, there have been frames where I just automatically discard them.
Like just blanked on it. Yeah.
My eyes just skate past them.
Yeah.
Like there's one scene here, the how do I even term it? Where he's eating, or where he's eating the
It's not cannibalism, right? Because it's monsters.
Yeah. Where the two frames are very dark, so I just didn't even bother looking at them. And you know, when you really look at them, it gives you a different idea of what's going on. Because I thought they were being eaten alive, and you know, it's probably not the case.
Yeah, because you said that, and I was like, oh no, there's eyeballs on the table.
Yeah,
and like didn't notice, like, holy shit, there's eyeballs on the table.
And a head.
Yeah. So,
and I had stopped and I had looked at this scene for probably a couple minutes, just trying to figure out what was going on, and like did not notice the eyeballs.
Yeah. So, I think that the other thing here too is that when you have all together at once, like this big volume, you know, or the entire series, it's easier to want to speed read it because you can get through it. And when you're month to month on this or week to week on this kind of thing, you know, or in Berserk's case, there were a lot of hiatuses. And so it was, you know, probably really difficult to wait. But you're rereading a chapter maybe 2 or 3 times, which is kind of what happened when we, you know, decided to go through this chapter one more time, and will happen for the next chapters until we get to the beginning of the Golden Age arc. And so that's probably good on your first front end run here.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about the, did you have anything else you wanted to say there?
I don't think so. I am pretty fascinated by this idea that everything that happens has a meaning, and just needing to slow down even further to begin to see some of these things that I hadn't noticed before.
The other stuff that I was going to talk about is just like, so there's a fight here, right? We have an actual fight. This is the new and improved Zondark Plus. And so he, engages Guts. There's a hit with an axe, and it's actually like overpowers Guts. What did you think about this fight in general? Was this something that you're like, I don't care?
This definitely, the first read through of this was the fight where I started to respect him in terms of his fighting style, I suppose you would say, because that is absolutely true. He is preparing, when Zondark comes on the scene, he is preparing to take him on, and there's this little translation to, what are these letters?
Kanji.
The translation is calm, and you see that he's inside himself, and he just has this pose like he's ready and he's gathered inside himself in order to take this on. And a lot of the stances here, I really enjoyed them, just seeing him come into his own.
And so then Guts whacks off one of Zondark's arms, and you get to see something that I think is probably your first time seeing this specifically. Maybe there's been other fiction, American fiction, you've seen this, but it's the secret of monster kind. Go play Dragon Quest IV if you want to hear that a million times. And that is single generation cellular regeneration and evolution. And so what do you think about that?
My initial response to that is frustration, because I think it's overpowered. It's like cheat code.
Yeah, so that is true, right? But he is he's now part monster, right? He's got the Count's daemon in him.
Yeah, and actually that's true. But Guts is not going to die in this encounter.
And you're saying that because
he's the main character, and without him there's no story.
Okay, so then what you're complaining about here is plot armor, right?
Yeah, I felt like the stakes were low despite this horrifying creature.
So I guess what I would want to ask you here is is there a story where the main character doesn't have plot armor? Could you not just launch that complaint at any story with a main character that has to become victorious in the face of adversaries?
That is absolutely true.
So why are you hating on Guts then?
I suppose I want there to be stakes.
The stakes are always that he could die, right?
He's not going to die, so that's not something that's on the table. So some sort of anxiety about something else that might happen.
What if Pucker Vargas got hurt?
I don't think that's going to happen.
But would that be stakes enough? Even you're not even thinking that's going to happen. So I guess my question here is is there a story with a hero where the plot armor isn't just the name of the game?
I guess so. That's actually so funny because I used to read the Red Wall books when I was a kid.
I've never heard of these.
They're about little mice and moles that run around this fantasy world with swords, and they're all adorable, and the food sounds delicious. But
shout out Reepichi.
What?
It's a C.S. Lewis character.
Okay.
Boys of the Dawn. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Martin the Warrior. Anyway, sorry. So there's one book where he's fighting a crab, the main character. It might have been Martin the Warrior. I'm not sure. And I realized he's not going to die. And I put down the book and I never read another one again.
So you can't put this down because I'm not going to allow you to do it.
Right. I know. It's just that.
I get what you're saying.
That realization when I was a kid, oh, there are no stakes here. And I feel like, don't hate for this, or I'm so sorry, but I feel like he is not doing a good job of making me anxious about something. If it's not going to be
Right.
death, then there has to be something else on the table.
Perfect. So this is good. I think this is like one thing is like I'm glad that we have like general disagreements about this, and I definitely want your organic take on how you feel about this, and I would like you to like try to hold on to this as long as you possibly can. Okay, because it is good and it's a question asked, because what you're saying is like guts can't fight monsters. That's what you're saying. Like it's not realistic. You're saying like the secret of monster kind is too OP for guts to realistically hang with it and it not be plot armor.
To me, it's just two different things. Like, this is OP on the one hand, and he's never gonna die. So, I mean, and you know, like if I get clapped over the head for this nonchalance, I'm like, ugh, whatever, no stakes, and like Gwytherinn, if he just, you know, totally rocks my world by proving me wrong or shaking me out of that nonchalance, I will be so impressed.
Power charge!